Let's have a look at how we can create some simple animation without using any keyframes at all. I've got this bit of bacteria and I want it to randomly move around in the shot and randomly rotate. So I'm going to go select bacteria, press R for rotation. If I select rotation, go up to the animation menu and choose add expression. That's going to add an expression to this property and it's waiting for the expression to be typed in. Now I'm going to go to the expression language menu. I'm going to go to property. I'm going to choose wiggle. That's going to add the wiggle expression and it needs some variables in there. It needs at least two, frequency and amplitude. I'm going to select inside of the brackets here and just remove everything that I don't want, being careful not to select the brackets themselves. And I want to put in the two most important variables: frequency, how many random or wiggled movements a second, and the amount. So I'm going to go 1, and then I need to separate it with a comma. And well, because I'm dealing with rotation here, this second number is going to relate to degrees. So what's the maximum number of degrees I want it to rotate in, either plus or minus? I'm going to say, oh, maximum of 180 degrees. If I want to complete that, I just click away and that's applied. And if I hit spacebar now to play back, you can see now that's randomly rotating. Now my composition is only 120 frames long, but if this was like an hour long, this would randomly be rotating for an hour without any keyframes at all. And if I wanted to change the values, for example, here I wanted to make it 360, I can type in 360 and then you can see it's moving much bigger amounts. I'm more or less happy with where it was, so I'm going to bring it back down to, maybe I'll go 150. So that's now randomly rotating. I want to do the same on the position. So I'm going to select bacteria, press P for position, and a shorter or quicker way to add the expression is if I press the Alt key and click on the stopwatch. That doesn't add a keyframe, but it adds an expression. And if I want to add the wiggle expression without going to the expression language menu and rubbing out all the stuff that's in the middle of the brackets, I can just type wig, and then After Effects will predict that you're probably going to want to use the wiggle expression, so I'll hit return. And then it will want the two variables. So I'm going to say 1, comma, and now this is on position. So this relates to pixels, not degrees this time, but pixels. So I want it to move maybe, well, let me try 100 pixels and then click away. And now I've got random position and random rotation. I'm going to increase that random position a little bit more. Okay, so now I've created some random movement without any keyframes. Now I've got a background for this that I'm going to enable. Background's just got some faint blobs in the background and I want them to move, but the problem is if I just turn off my bacteria, that's just a static bit of artwork. These blobs aren't individual, so I can't add the randomness to them. And I want them to feel quite liquidy, like it's in the body. So I'm going to use an effect to do this. I'm going to go over to my effects and presets, into the distort menu. There's lots of different ways we can distort the image, and I'm going to use this one called turbulent displace. If I take that, put it onto my background image, you may see very quickly the image is being distorted. If I turn off and on, you can see that's what it's doing. It's doing some displacement. I've got an amount and a size value. I've got some other controls here, but most interestingly for us, I've got evolution, which means I can animate that displacement by changing the degrees. If I move that along, you can see it's moving it around. Now I could keyframe this, but again, my aim here is not to use any keyframes, only to allow numbers to change values. So instead of keyframing it, I'm going to do what we did before. I'm going to press Alt, click on the stopwatch. That's going to add an expression to the evolution amount. And when you do it from the effects controls menu, it's really helpful because down here in my layers, I can see, oh, it's revealed my effects, turbulent displace, evolution, and I can see there's the expression. Now I'm not going to use wiggle this time because I don't want it to wiggle back and forwards. I want it to continually evolve. So I'm going to use a different expression language menu, key time. The time expression is probably the simplest expression. but it needs some values in there for it to do something. So I'm going to put time and I'm going to put star. That means every second, change the value by whatever I put in. So if I put in, say 100, and then click away, it's now applied. So if I go to, say, frame 30, so I'm running this at 30 frames a second, that shows me I'm at 100 degrees. As I move along, it's continually moving. So if I play that back, just wait for that to load all the frames in the RAM. So if I play that back, you can now see that background is displacing, is warping around in time. And of course, if I want it to be faster, I can just change that number value. And again, this could be going on for hours. This could be a very long background. If I then just collapse both those layers down, enable my bacteria, I can see there is my animation and there is my background. And so this whole setup has been done without any keyframes at all. If I wanted to add a few more bacteria to the shot, then I'm going to rename this bacteria to bacteria 1, because in After Effects, when you've got a layer name with a number after it, if you duplicate the layer, you get another layer with the same name but a different number after it. So if I select bacteria, edit, duplicate, I've got bacteria 2. Now, interestingly enough, bacteria 2 is not exactly in the same place. It's a different place. And if I duplicate bacteria 2, the shortcut to duplicate is Command D. I've got it in a different place, and I can do that maybe a couple more times till I've got 5 bacteria. When you use the wiggle expression, every layer has a unique value assigned to it that's called the random seed in how much wiggle it has. And so each layer now has a different amount of wiggle, which is really helpful because they're not all looking the same. I don't want them overlapping into each other, and I do want to vary their size. So bacteria 1, I'll keep the original size. Bacteria 2, I'm going to press S for scale, scale it down. And bacteria 3, scale it down. And I'm just going to basically scale each of these down apart from the original one. So I've got these just floating around in the background. And that's how I can create an animation without using any keyframes at all. And it's very easy to control because I just need to go in and change number values, not keyframes, if I need to make edits and changes to my animation.